Alien vet refused treatment. The human vet just whispered, "Easy, buddy." Zarnak Station stood at the edge of the galaxy, a beacon of hope and healing. It was a place where alien species from every corner of the universe came to seek treatment. The station's medical facilities were renowned, equipped with the most advanced technology and staffed with the best physicians from countless worlds. Yet, even with all their expertise, they found themselves at a loss one quiet afternoon. A powerful diplomat from the Tsark, a species known for their enormous size and strange biology, was found in critical condition. The diplomat had collapsed during a routine meeting, convulsing and gasping for breath. The station's best alien doctors were summoned immediately, but despite their advanced understanding of biology, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. The diplomat species had an extremely complex system, one that defied the laws of biology most understood. No one could help. Their usual tools and methods failed them, and they were running out of time. With the Tsark on the brink of war, the stakes were too high. If the diplomat died, it could set off a chain of events that would lead to devastation. In a desperate attempt, the station's head physician, a sharp-eyed alien named Dr. Xylath, made a bold decision. He knew of a human on the station, a vet with a reputation for treating strange creatures. The human doctor. Marcus Holt worked on the outer edges of the station, mostly dealing with the less glamorous cases, routine checkups for small animals and the occasional bizarre emergency. But he had a knack for handling creatures with unusual biology. Doctor. Xylath, unsure but willing to try anything, reached out to Marcus. "Come quickly, Dr. Holt. There's a situation that requires your expertise." The message was short, to the point. Marcus had never expected his simple job as a vet to cross paths with the politics of alien diplomacy. When he arrived at the medical wing, he was met with cold stares and whispers. The alien doctors were clearly not impressed with his presence. They had their way of doing things, and humans were not on their list of experts when it came to advanced species. Marcus didn't care. He wasn't there for their approval. The Tsark diplomat was lying on the table, pale and trembling. The room was filled with a mixture of tension and urgency. The alien doctors were busy scanning the diplomat with their high-tech devices, but nothing seemed to work. Marcus took one step into the room and felt the heavy silence that followed him. He could feel the alien eyes on him, measuring him, questioning his abilities. But he remained calm. He approached the diplomat's bedside and took a deep breath. His hands were steady as he examined the diplomat's body. His eyes scanned for the signs that no machine could detect. His expertise was rooted in practical, hands-on experience. "Easy, buddy," Marcus whispered to himself. He had faced tough situations before, and he wasn't about to back down now. This wasn't about technology, it was about understanding the creature in front of him. He reached out, gently touching the diplomat's arm, carefully feeling for signs of injury or distress. His fingers traced the delicate pattern of veins and nerves beneath the skin. Human hands. How could they possibly help with something like this? One of the alien doctors muttered under his breath. Marcus ignored the comment. He focused on the diplomat's breathing, then pressed his fingers lightly against a spot on the diplomat's neck. Suddenly, the diplomat's body stiffened and the eyes fluttered open. For a moment, Marcus felt a jolt of hope. But the diplomat's condition wasn't improving. Marcus needed more time. "What's his status?" Marcus asked, looking at Dr. Xylath. The alien physician didn't speak for a moment, clearly frustrated. "We don't know. We've tested everything. His body is rejecting the usual treatments. We've used every method we know, but it's all been futile." Marcus's mind raced. He had seen similar symptoms in various animals, creatures that no one else could understand. But this wasn't an animal. It was a diplomat, an alien whose species had no equivalent in human biology. Then it clicked. Marcus had remembered a condition that affected one of his own animals back on Earth, a kind of poisoning that caused paralysis and difficulty breathing. It was rare, but it could be treated with a specific antidote. The diplomat's alien biology had a similar response. If Marcus could isolate the cause, he might be able to create a remedy, just like he had with the animals in his care. Without a word, Marcus turned to the workbench nearby. He grabbed a few tools, all of which were unfamiliar to him. The alien doctors stared, waiting for him to fail. Marcus didn't care. His hands worked quickly, his mind focused on the task. He mixed a variety of substances, creating a compound that he felt might trigger the antidote. It wasn't a guaranteed solution, but it was the only thing he could think of. He had nothing to lose. With all eyes on him, Marcus returned to the diplomat's side. He injected the compound into the diplomat's arm. The room fell silent as everyone waited. It felt like an eternity. Minutes passed, and then slowly the diplomat's body began to relax. His breathing became steadier, his pulse stronger. The color returned to his face. The alien doctors stared in disbelief. It wasn't just that the diplomat was getting better. It was that a human had done something none of them could. Marcus stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The diplomat opened his eyes fully now, blinking at the alien faces surrounding him. "What happened?" the diplomat asked, his voice hoarse. Marcus smiled. "Easy, buddy, you're gonna be fine." The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Marcus had done the impossible. The alien doctors, once skeptical, now stood in stunned silence. And somewhere deep in Marcus's mind, he knew this was only the beginning. This was just one battle in a much larger war that was yet to come. The moment the diplomat had regained consciousness, the tension in the room seemed to lift, but it was only temporary. The alien doctors, once filled with skepticism, now stood silently around the patient, still processing what had just happened. Dr. Marcus Holt had saved the diplomat's life, but at what cost? His methods, untested and human, had worked when the most advanced technology had failed. Yet the alien physicians were not ready to accept that a human had bested them. They hadn't even given him credit for his skill, only for his luck. Doctor. Xyleth, the head physician, couldn't hide his frustration. He had witnessed Marcus's success, but his pride had been wounded. The Tsark, an ancient and proud species, had never allowed humans to be a part of their high-level medical practices, and now one human had done what their entire team couldn't. That was not something he could accept easily. As Marcus left the medical wing after the successful treatment, he could feel the eyes of the alien staff on him. It wasn't admiration that followed him, it was doubt. The whispers, while polite, were full of skepticism. They didn't want to acknowledge that a human, someone they considered a mere animal caretaker, had managed to save one of their most esteemed diplomats. But Marcus wasn't concerned. He had come here to do a job, and he had done it. What anyone thought about him didn't matter. He had saved a life, and that was enough. Or so he thought. The following morning, he was called to the Central Medical Council, a space where only the most prestigious alien physicians gathered. The Tsark diplomat, who had recovered and was back on his feet, was seated among the council members. The atmosphere in the room was stiff, and the tension was thick. Marcus felt the weight of judgment, even before the first words were spoken. "Dr. Holt, doctor." Xyleth began, his voice controlled but tense. "While your actions yesterday were unconventional, the outcome was undeniably positive. However, we cannot overlook the fact that your methods are foreign to us. You may have saved the diplomat's life, but your approach was reckless and inefficient. We operate on proven science, and your hunches do not belong in our medical practice." Marcus stood tall, his hands resting by his sides. He had faced worse criticisms before, and this wasn't going to break him. "I don't see how it's reckless to save a life," he said calmly. "You were all standing around, waiting for something to happen while the diplomat's condition got worse. I did what needed to be done. Sometimes it's not about following protocols, it's about getting the job done." Dr. Xyleth's face tightened at the words. "This is not about getting the job done, Dr. Holt. This is about science and responsibility you cannot simply rely on instincts when dealing with a species you don't fully understand. You risked much more than you realize." Marcus could sense the anger rising within the room. The council was struggling with the idea that a human had done what their entire race of physicians couldn't. He understood their pride, but it wasn't his problem. The diplomat's life had been saved, and that should have been the end of it. "I wasn't trying to undermine your science," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was just trying to save a life, and in that moment, science couldn't do it. I wasn't thinking about what was proven or unproven. I was thinking about the person in front of me." The council was silent, each member processing his words. For a moment, Marcus thought they might come to some sort of agreement. But then the diplomat, who had been quiet up until now, spoke. "Dr. Holt," the diplomat said, his voice steady but deep, "I owe you my life. There is no denying that, but Xyleth is right. What you did yesterday was unpredictable. It worked, but it's not a solution we can apply every time. This was a rare event, one that can't be replicated by just anyone. Marcus nodded slowly. He understood. He wasn't naive enough to think his actions were something that could be used for every case. But that didn't change the fact that he had been the one to save the diplomat when no one else could. It had been his experience, his understanding of how to deal with the unfamiliar, that had made all the difference. "You're right," Marcus said, his voice calm. "It won't work every time, but sometimes you have to rely on what you know. I don't have the technology you do, but I have my hands and my experience with creatures who don't follow the rules of biology, you know. I don't need all your gadgets to help. I just need to listen and then act. Doctor." Xyleth's eyes narrowed, but the diplomat held up a hand, stopping him before he could speak. "I believe we have more to discuss here," the diplomat said, his tone final. "But for now, let us return to the medical wing and assess the situation further. Doctor." "Holt, you may be dismissed for now." Marcus left the council chambers with mixed emotions. He had saved a life, but he still felt like an outsider. Despite the diplomat's gratitude, the Tsark had not fully embraced his methods, and it was clear they never would. The medical community here was built on tradition, and Marcus was a disruption to that. He couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration. He had done something no one else could, yet they didn't understand. They didn't respect his ability nor his approach. It was as if his success had been a fluke in their eyes, something that couldn't be repeated. But he wasn't going to let it go. He wasn't going to leave the station with his tail between his legs. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, and he had no intention of backing down. His job wasn't just to treat animals anymore. Now, it was about showing the universe that humans had something valuable to offer. He didn't need their approval, but he would earn their respect. Back in his quarters, Marcus sat alone, staring out at the stars. He knew this wasn't going to be easy. He wasn't here to make friends, but to prove a point, that humans had a place in this galaxy, and they had something unique to offer. The next morning, Marcus was called back to the medical wing. The diplomat was stable, but more importantly, there was a new challenge on the horizon, one that would require Marcus's expertise again. And this time, the stakes were even higher. Marcus stood up, a sense of determination filling his chest. He had made it this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. The days after Marcus's tense encounter with the Tsark Medical Council were filled with both uncertainty and opportunity. The alien doctors continued to question his methods, even though the diplomat was alive and recovering thanks to his efforts. Marcus had earned a kind of reluctant respect, but that didn't mean they were ready to accept him into their fold. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined to prove that he belonged here. Marcus spent his days in the medical wing, observing, learning, and treating whatever came his way. The station was filled with creatures from every corner of the galaxy, each with unique medical needs. And while Marcus was still an outsider in the eyes of many, his expertise was undeniable. Time and time again, his instincts saved lives that the Tsark's technology and medical science could not. Still, it wasn't enough. The other alien physicians, especially Dr. Xyleth, made sure that his contributions were downplayed. Marcus knew that the Tsark doctors viewed his successes as lucky breaks, rather than evidence of his skill. But that didn't stop him. If anything, it only made him more determined. One day, as Marcus was treating a rare alien species known as the Thalra, a crisis struck. The Thalra were massive, reptilian creatures, known for their strength and resilience. However, they were prone to an unusual condition that caused severe dehydration, which often led to death if untreated. One of the Thalra was brought in, its scales pale and dry, its breathing shallow. The station's medical staff had already tried everything they could think of. They pumped the creature full of fluids, used advanced rehydration technologies, but nothing worked. The Thalra's condition continued to deteriorate. The doctors were ready to give up, but Marcus saw something that they hadn't. He approached the creature slowly, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. He had learned that the Thalra responded well to calm voices. Marcus carefully ran his hands over the Thalra's body, feeling for any abnormalities. It wasn't the dehydration that was the primary issue. It was a disruption in its internal systems. The fluids weren't being absorbed properly. Marcus suspected a kind of shock to the Thalra's organs, likely caused by a deep psychological trauma from the journey it had been on before arriving at the station. The Tsark physicians watched in silence, their skepticism still thick in the air. They knew how to treat the body, but the mind of a creature like the Thalra was beyond their understanding. Marcus didn't waste time. He asked for a special sedative, one that would put the Thalra into a deep, healing sleep. Once administered, Marcus focused on the creature's internal systems, carefully monitoring the effects. The Thalra's body started to relax, and the hydration treatments began to take hold. After several long hours of watching the creature's condition, Marcus let out a sigh of relief. The Thalra was stabilizing. Its scales slowly regained their color and the creature's breathing deepened. It wasn't fully recovered, but Marcus knew it would survive. The alien doctors, who had been quietly watching in the background, couldn't help but stare in awe. Dr. Xyleth, who had been the loudest critic of Marcus's methods, was silent now, his eyes fixed on the Thalra. "You did it," Dr. Xyleth said softly, almost as if in disbelief. Marcus didn't respond right away. He simply stood there watching the Thalra's steady recovery. He had done it again. It wasn't just the medical technology that had saved the creature. It was his understanding of its mind, its behavior, and his willingness to think beyond the usual solutions. "I just did what needed to be done," Marcus said after a moment, his voice calm but firm. Sometimes it's not just about science. It's about understanding the creature you're dealing with. Every species is different. You have to know when to trust the tools and when to trust yourself. Dr. Xylath's expression softened, but only for a moment. He still wasn't ready to fully accept Marcus's approach, but he couldn't deny the results. The Thalra was going to make a full recovery, and that was something they hadn't expected. For the first time since Marcus had arrived at Zarnak Station, the alien doctors seemed to look at him with something resembling respect. They may not have agreed with his methods, but they could see that he was a force to be reckoned with. As the days passed, more and more creatures came through the station, each with their own challenges. And with each new case, Marcus continued to prove himself. He wasn't just a human vet anymore. He was becoming a critical member of the medical team. But it wasn't just his skill that earned him recognition. It was his attitude, his ability to remain calm and focused, even when the odds were stacked against him. He had an uncanny ability to think outside the box, to find solutions where others saw only failure. It was that unique quality that set him apart from the other physicians. Despite the growing respect he was earning, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was still being held at arm's length. The Tsark doctors might have acknowledged his skills, but they still viewed him as an outsider. They didn't fully understand his approach, and they probably never would. But Marcus didn't need their approval. He didn't need to be accepted by them. He was here to save lives, to do the work he was good at, and that was enough. One evening, as Marcus was finishing up a long day in the medical wing, he was called to the council chambers once again. This time, however, it wasn't for a confrontation. The diplomat who had once been on the brink of death was there, along with Dr. Xylath and several other high-ranking members of the Tsark medical community. They had come to acknowledge Marcus's contributions in a more formal way. "We've seen the results of your work, Doctor." "Holt," the diplomat said, "you've proven yourself capable, more than capable, of handling the challenges we face. We have decided that you will be officially integrated into our medical team as an equal." Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sudden change of heart. He had expected more resistance, but it seemed that his actions had finally spoken louder than words. "I'll do my job," Marcus said, his voice steady, "but don't expect me to change how I work. I don't need approval. I just need to help." The diplomat smiled, his eyes softening. "We understand, Dr. Holt, and we're grateful." For the first time, Marcus felt like he truly belonged. He had proven that humanity had something valuable to offer, and he had earned his place among the stars. As he walked back to his quarters that night, Marcus couldn't help but think about how far he had come. He was no longer just a human vet. He had become a vital part of something much bigger, a force that could change the galaxy. He had proven that sometimes the best way to face the impossible was with a steady hand, an open mind, and a willingness to go beyond what was expected. The success of Marcus's work was undeniable, but with success came complications. As more and more creatures sought out treatment at Zarnak Station, the alien medical community found itself at a crossroads. While some began to accept Marcus's methods, others were still resistant to change. The Tsark in particular were a proud and ancient species, and the idea that a human, a being they had long viewed as inferior, could be an essential part of their medical team unsettled many. It wasn't just the doctors that had concerns. The highest authorities on the station, including Queen Velora, Ilara's mother and the ruler of the Tsark people, had taken notice of Marcus's growing influence. The queen had always valued tradition above all else, and the idea of a human playing such a pivotal role in their medical efforts did not sit well with her. As much as she respected the success of the diplomat's recovery, the fact remained that a human had altered the balance of power in a field dominated by her species. Marcus had heard whispers of the queen's disapproval. The tension in the air was palpable. The once welcoming atmosphere at Zarnak Station had shifted. The alien doctors, while acknowledging his talent, were beginning to view him as a threat. And the queen, ever the symbol of Tsark authority, had started to question whether Marcus's presence was a step forward or a dangerous precedent. One day, Marcus was summoned to the royal chambers. The invitation had come from none other than Queen Velora herself, a summons that carried both weight and consequence. As Marcus entered the royal chambers, he was struck by the sheer size of the room. The walls were adorned with intricate alien artwork, and the floor was polished to a mirror shine. At the far end of the room, sitting on a throne that seemed to glow with power, was Queen Velora. Her presence was commanding, and even the most experienced doctors had to lower their gaze in her presence. "Dr. Holt," Queen Velora began, her voice carrying the authority of centuries of rule, "your success in treating the diplomat has not gone unnoticed. The Tsark are deeply grateful for your efforts." Marcus bowed slightly, acknowledging her words. "Thank you, Your Majesty, I'm just doing my job." The Queen's sharp gaze never wavered as she regarded him. "Your work has indeed been impressive. But there is more to your presence here than just saving lives, isn't there? You are disrupting an order that has stood for generations." Marcus stood tall, meeting her gaze without fear. He had grown used to the scrutiny. "I'm not here to disrupt anything, Your Majesty. I'm here to help, nothing more, nothing less." Queen Velora studied him for a moment as if weighing his words. The silence between them was thick with tension. Finally, she spoke again. "You may be skilled, Dr. Holt, but your methods are untested. You are a human, a species we have long considered inferior, and yet you have earned the trust of many on this station. But I must ask you, how long can you maintain this success? How long will your unconventional methods work before they fail us?" Marcus took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I don't claim to have all the answers, Your Majesty, but I know one thing: I've saved lives, and I've done it in ways no one else could. I've seen things you can't learn in textbooks or from machines. I've worked with creatures that defy logic, and I've learned to listen to them, understand them. That's not something you can teach with science alone." The Queen's expression remained neutral, but Marcus could see the flicker of something in her eyes. It wasn't just skepticism, it was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear that Marcus, a human, had achieved something that their own people could not. Fear that he might be the beginning of something bigger, something they couldn't control. "You claim to understand," the Queen said slowly. "But do you understand the implications of your actions, Dr. Holt? You are not just treating animals or beings from distant worlds. You are making a mark on the history of the Tsark people. And history, as you well know, is not something we take lightly." Marcus felt the weight of her words. He knew what was at stake, but he wasn't going to back down now. "I'm not trying to make history, Your Majesty. I'm just trying to save lives. If that's something you fear, then maybe I'm not the one who needs to leave." The Queen's eyes narrowed. There was a pause, then she leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering to a more personal tone. "You are bold, Dr. Holt, and that makes you dangerous. You've proven yourself worthy in the eyes of many, but there are forces here who are not so easily convinced. I cannot allow someone who challenges the very foundation of our traditions to continue without consequence." Marcus's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not here to challenge anyone's traditions, Your Majesty. I'm here because your people need help. If you want to push me out because I'm human, then so be it. But I will keep helping where I can, no matter what." The Queen's gaze softened ever so slightly. She remained silent for a moment, her thoughts clearly racing. Finally, she spoke again, her tone more measured. "I've spoken to the council," she said, her voice carrying a weight that only a monarch could possess. "The decision has been made. You will remain here, Dr. Holt, but under one condition." Marcus waited, his body tense. "You will no longer work independently," the Queen continued. "From now on, you will be under the supervision of the Tsark medical team. You will report directly to Dr. Xylath and any treatments you perform will be reviewed and approved beforehand. Marcus felt a surge of frustration. It wasn't the full recognition he had hoped for, but it was something. He had been given a chance to stay, but at a cost. He nodded, accepting her decision, but inside he knew this wasn't the end. It was just another challenge. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to help." The Queen's expression softened further, though there was still a trace of doubt in her eyes. "Good. Remember, Dr. Holt, that Sark are proud and we value our traditions. But we also value those who prove themselves. You have much to prove, but I am giving you the chance." As Marcus left the royal chambers, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Queen's decision was both a victory and a warning. He had earned his place here, but he had also been reminded of the delicate balance he had to maintain. The Tsark were not ready to embrace him fully, but they had accepted his presence, at least for now. Marcus sat alone in his small quarters, looking out over the vast expanse of space. He had been in the galaxy for months now, yet each day still felt like a new challenge. The Tsark had accepted him, but barely. They still saw him as an outsider, someone whose methods were foreign, even dangerous. His work had proven invaluable to them, but it hadn't earned him the trust he longed for. It seemed like no matter how many lives he saved, they still viewed him as a threat, a human who didn't belong in their world. But Marcus wasn't about to let their doubts hold him back. He had earned his place on Zarnak Station, and he would prove that humans had something special to offer. The galaxy needed more than just technology and tradition. It needed understanding, empathy, and the courage to step outside the lines. Those were the qualities that Marcus brought with him every day. They couldn't be measured in tests or data. They were the things that saved lives. The call came late that night, a summons from Dr. Xylath. Marcus had learned that when Xylath called, it wasn't just to discuss a simple case. It was a matter of life and death. When Marcus arrived at the medical wing, he found the station's leadership gathered in the central command room. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the hum of advanced medical equipment and the faint murmurs of alien voices. The Tsark diplomat, whose life Marcus had saved, was seated at the center, his face pale. He wasn't alone. Several other high-ranking members of the Tsark Council were present. Dr. Xylath stood by a console, his eyes grim. "We have a problem, Dr. Holt," Xylath said, his tone serious. "A new alien species, the Korath, has entered our territory. They're hostile and they've been infecting the native species in this sector with a virulent, deadly disease. We've tried everything to stop it, but nothing has worked. We need your help." Marcus frowned, his mind racing. He had heard of the Korath, a brutal, warlike species known for their ability to wipe out entire populations with their biological weapons. They were merciless, and their tactics were unlike anything he had seen before. "What's the disease?" Marcus asked, trying to remain calm. Xylath hesitated before answering. "It's a fast-spreading virus that attacks the nervous system. It's almost like a biological weapon, targeting both physical and mental health. There are no known treatments. We've tried using standard medical procedures, but the virus evolves rapidly, and every attempt to stop it has failed." The tension in the room grew thicker. The Korath were an enemy that even the Tsark feared. If they allowed this virus to spread, the consequences could be catastrophic. But Marcus wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He had dealt with dangerous creatures before, and he knew that sometimes the solution wasn't in the technology. It was in understanding the problem from a different angle. "I'll need more information about the virus," Marcus said, his voice steady. "The only way to beat something like this is to understand it. Where did it originate? How is it spreading?" Xylath nodded, pulling up a holographic display of the virus. "It appears to be airborne, highly contagious. It's been spreading rapidly among the local wildlife, and now it's starting to affect the Tsark citizens who have come into contact with the infected creatures." Marcus studied the display carefully. The virus seemed to have an unusual pattern of behavior, one that didn't match anything he had encountered before. There was something about it that felt deliberate, as if it had been designed with a purpose. The more he studied it, the more he realized that the virus wasn't just a biological weapon, it was a weapon of control. "This virus isn't just attacking the body," Marcus said, his voice sharp. "It's designed to control the mind. It's spreading through the nervous system, causing hallucinations, confusion, and aggression. It's more than just disease, it's manipulation. The Korath aren't just trying to wipe us out, they're trying to take over. The room fell silent. The realization hit everyone like a wave. The Korath weren't just spreading disease, they were infecting minds, turning allies into enemies. It was a form of warfare that no one had anticipated. "We need to stop this before it spreads further," Marcus continued. "But to do that, we need a treatment that works on both the physical and mental aspects of the virus. We need to find its core, understand how it's manipulating the nervous system." The Tsark Council exchanged worried glances. They had always relied on their technology to solve problems, but this was different. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with machines or medicine alone. It was a problem of the mind, a problem that required understanding. Marcus turned to Dr. Xylath. "I need to work directly with the infected," he said. "I need to understand how this virus behaves in living creatures. If I can see how it affects them, I can develop a cure." Xylath hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange it, but you'll be putting yourself at risk. The virus is unpredictable, and we have no idea how it might affect you." "I'm willing to take that risk," Marcus said firmly. "If I don't, we'll lose everything." The next few days were filled with preparations. Marcus worked alongside the Tsark medical staff, gathering samples from infected creatures and studying their behavior. He observed how the virus spread, how it attacked both the body and the mind. The more he learned, the more he realized just how dangerous the Korath's weapon truly was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of studying and experimenting, Marcus developed a treatment. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He administered the first dose to an infected creature, holding his breath as he watched the results. The creature's breathing slowed, its body relaxed, and the aggression in its eyes began to fade. The virus wasn't gone, but the treatment was working. It was the breakthrough they needed. With the cure in hand, Marcus returned to the medical wing where the council and the Tsark leadership waited. "It's not a permanent fix," he said, holding up the vial of antidote, "but it's a start. We can stabilize the infected, and from there we can develop a more permanent solution." The room erupted in applause. It was a victory, and it was clear that Marcus had proven his worth. He had done what no one else could. He had stopped the Korath's virus in its tracks. But even as the celebration took place, Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. The Korath were still out there, and the fight was far from over. As the days passed and the Tsark began to heal, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had earned their respect, not through words, but through actions. He had shown them that humanity had something valuable to offer. It wasn't just technology or science. It was empathy, understanding, and a willingness to fight for what was right. Marcus had become a hero, not just in the eyes of the Tsark, but in his own heart. And as he looked out at the stars once more, he knew that the battle was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new enemies, and new diseases to fight. But Marcus was ready for whatever came next. He had proven that, no matter how impossible the task seemed, there was always a way to overcome it.